Oops. Fail. Drop that right away. So, hey guys, what's up? It's Rob and Mike here today, and we are doing the Facebook Live, and we are, Mike's kind of stepping in for Bill. So we got a lot of subjects we're going to talk about here. And one of the things is I wanted to give Mike an opportunity. I'm going to grab my laptop, and I wanted to give Mike the opportunity to talk about Rip It Racing first, and about your grading here, and that sort of thing. If you want to give a little info about that, I'll grab my laptop.
Yeah, so literally, just as I walked in, I brought in a huge batch of PSA submissions to the shop, and we had, at least 3 people here waiting for me to walk in the door with their cards. So it was good to see them excited about their cards, getting their submissions back. But if you're interested in grading, I do the group submissions for the shop, obviously for the customers of the shop, for Bill, for Bobby. So if you have questions about that, you can just reach out to me. That's usually the easiest thing to do. But the blanket question that you get the most often with grading is, what's my card going to grade? I'll never give you an answer to that question, so I don't know, just like anybody else will tell you. But yeah, like Rob said, I do NASCAR breaks. Most of you probably are familiar with me at this point, being around the shop and trade nights and those types of things. So if you ever have questions, shoot me a message or reach out. Be happy to talk shop with anybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So yeah, we've got. I reached out to Mike or whatever, and I was like, "Hey, what do you guys want to? What are we going to talk about?" I had a couple ideas. You already had some good ideas already kind of loaded there, and so we just kind of made a list together, and we're going to talk about some things. So I think this is pretty. I don't know if I want to use the word content, because that word's thrown around a lot.
It is.
But this is pretty content heavy. I mean, we're going from a few subjects here, and I hope you guys find this interesting, what we're going to talk about. So we'll start. I think the second one's on our list is maybe the most controversial.
Definitely.
So and me and you are going to have some definite opinions about it, and I think you're going to have some figures to back up what you're saying. I think I'm going to have some figures to back up what you're saying, and kind of talk about that. But let's start with the first one.
Sure.
And it's a trap that we all fall into as collectors. But we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how to avoid keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
Especially in this market that's like booming. Things are going high priced again, just like during COVID. What are some thoughts you have about that?
I mean, just like you said, content heavy, and my first thought with keeping up with the Joneses is, you see on Instagram or Facebook or whatever other social media or, outlet you may be on, you see all these big hits.
Yes.
Or kaboom, downtown, you won't believe what this was, this was pulled, or, and I am very guilty of that with my Rip It Racing Instagram page, because I really only post big cards on there. But it's a kind of a trap, like you said, that we all fall into, that you start to see these cards, and if you are in a little bit of a rut, maybe you haven't pulled something big in a while, maybe you haven't bought something big in a while, or maybe it's just not in your budget.
Yes.
Then you start to feel kind of left out,
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the right vibe that we want. I don't think as people in the hobby, we don't want people walking around thinking, oh man, because I didn't get this or that.
As a card collecting community, and I think you're right, and I'll add to your point. I'm in here a lot of times with my phone taking pictures, and a guy's opening a box, and he's thrilled about a $30 card he hit or a $20 card. I don't take a picture of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that worth? And I go to the card that's got the big resale or comp, on eBay.
Sure.
And that's what I share. And, just yesterday there were people in here opening product. One guy opened some Elvis cards and stuff. And, which we'll talk about Leaf here in a little bit. And he loved like some of his low numbered cards that just looked cool,
Right.
but I'm trying to show the $50 and the $100 card, not the cool card that he was proud of that he hit. So I agree. We all fall into that trap, and I mean it's tempting, right? There is a gambling aspect.
Yeah.
So I think it is tempting to overshoot our budget.
Yeah, and I see it. I see it all the time with breaks. Doing the shows.
Mm-hmm.
People digging through the value boxes at shows, and when they find a $2 card in the value box that they're just super excited about, and you're like, I forgot that was even in that box.
Yeah.
But I use the term baller on a budget a lot with my group. It's easy to forget that there's people in the hobby that only have, maybe their budget's $5 or $10 a month, or $20 a month, or not everybody has a huge cushion to spend on sports cards.
Yeah.
So just trying to kind of remember to celebrate those small wins.
Yeah.
And I see other content creators out there that I've seen a couple of other people where they've made videos of, you won't believe how terrible this box was.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's okay to admit that you didn't get a good box.
Yeah.
If you got one and you're like, man, that really just kind of stunk.
Yeah.
It's okay. We've all been there.
Oh, yes.
More often than not,
Yeah.
So, sometimes I feel like it's like when your neighbor gets the new truck, you're like, man, now I want that,
Yeah. And that's what I think, Bill and I have even talked about before on these lives, that, you should collect what you like. That's what you should do. You should collect what you like, and you can't get into everything. You can't possibly collect everything. And you don't really want to be a gambler, and everybody does. I've seen boxes. See one guy buy a box and he gets $30 worth of cards out of his $150 box, and then the next $150 box he gets $200 worth of cards. I mean, this is just we're not highlighting that. We're highlighting the good hits, the good boxes.
Yeah.
Obviously, and one thing I was going to mention, you mentioned like out at the show. I just definitely wanted to mention that the Southway American Legion show is just next Saturday.
Yep.
You're actually going to be there, right?
I'll be there. Yep.
He's going to be set up. Of course, I'll be there. It'll be the usual guys. Just had somebody ask me earlier, Kellen's Crazy Cards. He's wanting a spot there. He'd missed the last Chillicothe show. It's the longest running monthly show in Central Ohio. So we hope you can make that and you can come out there. So I mentioned, going into the next subject here, I'd mentioned Elvis cards, which are a Leaf product. And I also mentioned taking, pictures of big hits. And there was a guy that came in here, it had to be Friday of last week, and he just hit monster after monster out of Leaf.
Yeah.
Out of Leaf. So give us some thoughts on Leaf, and then I'll try to direct our conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about this.
Well, if you've talked to me in the shop at trade night or at Topps Hobby Rip night, or if you're part of my group, breaking or what, if you've talked to me very much at all, you know where I stand on Leaf. I'm a fan of Leaf, and I don't think Leaf gets enough love. I think that's what maybe we should have titled the second question, is where's the love for Leaf or something, But what I mean by that is Topps. Nothing against Topps. We all love Topps. And it's great that they're back in like the football world, for example, and back in WWE. But Topps currently unlicensed football.
Yes.
Leaf currently unlicensed football. There's a big price difference. Both
quite a bit.
Both on the product itself to buy a box, and then I actually did some research.
Okay.
Which I'll just throw out a couple quick numbers that I looked up over the last couple of days. Jaden Daniels, for example.
Okay.
Rookie autograph out of Topps Chrome. Roughly the cheapest one I could find that had sold on eBay was around $300.
Okay.
I looked up Jaden Daniels' rookie autograph from Leaf. not in his college uniform.
Yes.
It like in pro set.
Yeah.
Where he's in the pro uniform, still unlicensed, obviously.
Yeah, just airbrush, just like Tops.
Yeah, just like Tops.
Yeah.
You could pick one up for $175. Buy it now, right now.
Okay. And
C.J. Stroud, very similar situation. Stroud was a little bit different because Topps Chrome was kind of after C.J.'s.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the timing of that was a little funnier.
Mm-hmm.
But very similar situation with Stroud with his autographs. About $100 difference from a Topps autograph to a Leaf autograph.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah. So I mean, you have a valid point, and it's definitely because I mean we're saying they're both unlicensed. They're both unlicensed, and nothing against Topps again, but some of the cards that Leaf's able to produce are beautiful.
Yeah.
They're as good or better looking than some of the cards Topps produces. So I could understand when we switch this corner in. I'll have a couple buts to what we're talking about here, but when we switch this corner and it becomes that Topps is officially licensed in March of next year for football, I can see, I can start to see it. Yeah. I can definitely start to see it, but I'll tell you what, time and time again, I watch people drop $250 on a Topps football product or drop $250 on a Leaf product, and I'll have a but to this in just a second. I constantly see in the Leaf product names, legends, Jaden Daniels, but even, Barry Sanders, Bo Jackson, people like that. Like, I feel like the Leaf is a better value. Now, there can be complete duds in either, but I feel like the complete dud boxes are greater in Topps for the most part. Now, we went on a kind of a string or a run that on Finest seemed pretty. Yeah. It seemed pretty good. Yeah. In that way, but so here's my but against Leaf. Here's my small problem. So there's a product called Heroes and Prospects. Yep. And I went through the first case, and it was like every box had one. It was like hand collected. It felt like, and every box had like a banger. So we go into the next case, and it was like there was a huge hit, but then it was kind of like we got a few boxes in a row that were duds. Yeah. One of the things I would say against Leaf, and then I'll switch this up and have a but, is the NIL is way deeper. Sure you're going to get 8 autographs in a jumbo box, but you're not going to, probably 6 of those guys have not touched a ball even in college level. Right. Or definitely not in the pros. Yeah,
or guys that are 3 deep at a school you've never heard of, like Delaware State or something.
100%. Sure. So I think we need to be careful with some of the really NIL heavy stuff from Leaf, or Leaf needs to be careful with that. But then there's a product coming out this Friday, and so it's a good time for us to have this discussion. It's Leaf Collective Football. So Leaf Collective Football is like a product where they're doing a little bit of the best of each of their product lines, so Pro Set and stuff like that. Yeah. In that product is Patrick Mahomes autos. Yeah. I mean, Patrick Mahomes autos in that product, as well as Barry Sanders, as well as... So I don't know what the mix is going to be there, but you're talking there's actual guys that you want to hit in that product, and then you go out another month or two, and there's a product, I think it's called For the Love of the Game. Mm-hmm. It's a football product. It's nothing but legends. Yeah. So I feel like there's less gambling involved in buying a box of Leaf than there is, as long as it's not too NIL heavy, than there is on a box of Topps. Yeah. But do you have any ideas why you think?
I've heard the theories that I've heard so many times about, or the knock on Leaf that I've heard is there's too many 101s, there's too many variations and all of that. But like when I did my price comparison, I just compared. For example, that like the Jaden Daniels auto was a base Topps Chrome. Yeah. Not numbered, and I just found the cheapest Leaf auto that I could find. Now the one I found of Jaden Daniels I think was numbered to like 25. Mm-hmm. So I was comparing a numbered to 25 to a non-numbered. Mm-hmm. So I understand the knock on multiple 101s and all of that, but we still get that in other.
Yeah.
Like I see it in racing.
Yeah.
I mean, in NASCAR with Prism, we've got gold vinyl 101s, we've got black finite 101s. Like, there's multiple 101s of everything out there. So I don't know. I don't know what the exact reason is.
Yeah.
But I just, from a value standpoint, I will probably die on this hill.
Yeah.
But I just think for the money, Leaf is a great product. If you're somebody that wants to bust a box and get something for your money, I think it should be on everybody's radar at least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I agree. So here's the big complaint I hear. And so we'll try to flip this on its end, I guess. Is the very thing you did. Well, my resale of this Jaden Daniels is only going to be $175. If it was a Topps card, it would be $300. Well, let's just ask this question. If it was cost of acquisition, like how many boxes did you have to buy? How much money did you put out?
Correct.
So what is the cost of acquisition to get that Jaden in the Topps product
Right.
versus in the Leaf product?
Right.
And I think you're going to find the value falls heavily with Leaf.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is true in all honesty. So
well, and I'll just add on to that. I know you've got stuff sitting here in front of us. This like Pro Set Pure, for example. I'm pretty confident. Leaf's kind of an open book with how they do things.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that products like Pro Set, they actually do hand collate.
I do believe that.
So, when you're thinking about what you're buying and what, like you said, your cost of acquisition, at least you in your mind can think, okay, somebody purposely built a case with the, thought of, we're going to put X amount of nice cards in this case, where with a Panini product, a Topps product, I don't know if it's a machine that's figuring that out, if it's AI, or if it's just your luck.
Yeah, and I don't know either. So just to kind of bring this to a close, I'll just throw two facts at you that I've mentioned this one before. We sell tons of Leaf.
Yeah.
We sell, average price point on a Leaf hobby box is $150 versus the average price on a price point on a Topps product's $300. Especially like football or something. And I'm direct with both. It's not that I'm not getting that product and I can't get it, but I'll tell you, did I go back in some way, and it's a little harder with Topps, I admit that. Did I go back this week and have to rebuy more Topps? No. But I spent $4,000 yesterday rebuying Leaf products that'll be hitting these shelves on Friday and Saturday. Yeah. So it's just, we do move that. There is a growing acceptance of it, and I think more people are discovering that value is there in those products. So, and matter of fact, one more thing is there's a Pro Set Pure out there from 2023, and there's a Leaf Futures out there. The reason that's all that's out there, even though I knew we were going to have this discussion, is because there's no Leaf back there. Right. Because it sells. Yeah. And so it's just really, keep in mind the cost of acquisition and what's the card look like, Again, different discussion once it's officially licensed by Topps.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Changes everything then. But, and that's why I did my comparison to Topps and not, like a Panini license, because I do understand the license carries some heavy weight with a lot of collectors, but...
Yeah, that's true. So we'll move on to another subject that you kind of brought up is WWE.
Yeah.
And what's it doing in the hobby, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I don't know if you're starting to see it in the shop or not. But I think a couple of things have happened recently with WWE. If you don't follow it, you might not be in the loop. Mm-hmm. But there's somebody else that's kind of running their creative now and is kind of in control of that. It's no longer Vince McMahon. So it's got a little bit of a different feel than it had. Now they are on Netflix. Monday Night Raw, which, has run for almost as long as I've been alive, is on Netflix. Okay. Which is, global.
Yeah. might have actually introduced a few new people to it because so many of us went cable free,
right,
and went to apps, and kind of that probably took that out of some of those people that follow that.
Yeah,
kind of took them out of the mix, but now they can be back in. Okay.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
And I think they've done a lot of things recently. Like I know WWE and NASCAR try to work together to cross promote.
Mm-hmm.
I know they've done a lot of collaborations with like Travis Scott, the guy that does the Air Jordan collaboration, you know, the musician.
Yeah.
Like they're just trying to do a lot of things that are mainstream, and I've noticed in the last probably year, really, that WWE seems to be starting to trend upward. I see it. I see some of the bigger breakers on like Fanatics Live that are doing a lot of WWE breaks all of a sudden, and you know, really talking about it, and you know, part of it might be because the new Topps Chrome has The Rock autographs.
Yes, that's true. And, you know, that product, I can just speak on the pricing of that product. I had blasters in here, I think, at $35. I think I went to $40. They sold out at $40. They're now $65.
Yeah.
Hobby boxes are over $400 a box. Yeah. The Mega you see sitting here in most, I have one. Most places are $125 to $130 on those megas. Yeah. So the money or whatever you want to say is following it. As far as the price increase there.
Yeah, yeah, and I see it at the shows. You know, I started to see it last year. Now, granted, last year was the first year I really started doing shows, but I started to see it toward the end of last year, and then the Chillicothe show last month. I had a lot of people asking for wrestling.
That's awesome.
And you know, not just people my age that have followed it a long time, but like I had a couple of young girls that were probably my daughter's age, 12, 13, digging through my value box of wrestling. Yeah.
Now, were those young girls? Because what I've seen is the younger girls are looking for the girls.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've seen. But I've seen that in here.
Yeah, and I, you know, the girls, just like in some of the other sports, which I think you probably are going to hit on. But the girls in wrestling seem to be leading the charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So before we go on to this next and last subject, do you feel like there's an opportunity right now for you who's out doing more shows now? Do you think there's an opportunity for you to get into like WWE and kind of provide that service for people?
Yeah, I actually told my wife about 2 months ago. I said, you know, as a dealer setting up at a show, I've always tried to have a little bit of this and a little bit of that because I felt like I needed to.
Yes.
And I still do to an extent, but I'm gonna make a real effort to do a little bit less of all this and that, and I'm gonna concentrate more on the lanes I want to be in, which is racing and wrestling, WWE.
Yes. And so that's one of my follow-up questions on this subject.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's this we've seen, you know, WWE take off. Do you feel like some of these undervalued lines of like racing, which you've made a break page, a very successful break page on, do you feel like maybe racing or maybe even hockey or something like that could be next? Or soccer? Here in the United States, soccer's still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Do you feel like some of those have potential for growth?
I mean, I know absolutely nothing about soccer.
Okay.
But, and there's one of the big buts.
Yeah.
I think soccer probably has the largest potential since you threw it into the conversation of any of them.
Yeah.
Because it's a global sport.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like I experience it with racing because I'm a NASCAR guy. And then we have a lot of people that are F1 fans.
Yeah.
And the F1 fans have kind of helped educate me by saying, you know, F1's a global motorsport.
I was going to throw F1 in there, but I was going to say, is that under the racing, or is it a subset?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people actually from a bigger perspective view F1 as somewhere higher on that radar than NASCAR, where people think, or it's assumed that NASCAR is kind of an American sport.
Yeah.
F1's more global. So soccer, to me, right in that same category. But I think, you know, soccer has a lot of potential. Hockey the Blue Jackets have had a great year. I think they've kind of tailed off here at the end of the season a little bit, but hockey cards are beautiful cards, and even golf. It's Masters Week.
Yeah.
Even golf, I feel like, has so much potential in the hobby.
Yeah. Panini released that Live League Prism.
Yeah.
That actually shot up. You know, it went up. And it's kind of a second-class league,
right?
My understanding, but it went up. And so, just mentioning the WWE, I'm going to critique Topps a little bit, and we're all cautious to do this, especially me. I'm really cautious to do this, but I'm going to critique them a little bit. I got one case of which thank God I did. I got one case of the hobby WWE Topps Chrome.
Yeah.
I got one case of the Blasters. I didn't even get the Megas offered to me. And just now, and you can't find it anywhere, is my point. Just now is the MVP buyback is, because isn't it next weekend is like a big event for WWE?
Yeah, WrestleMania is next weekend.
So whoever the winner is,
right.
they're kind of saying that's the MVP buyback, how it is for baseball. They're doing that for WWE. I don't have any WWE to sell you, really.
Yeah.
And so we are a buyback shop, and we appreciate that opportunity, but I just wish Topps would have made a little bit more available.
Right.
A little bit longer throughout the I don't know what to call it, a season.
Yeah.
Of WWE.
I kind of felt like when that transition happened and WWE switched to Topps Fanatics, to me it felt like that all happened very quickly.
Yeah.
This year, you know what I mean? Like, it felt like that license changed, and then within a few weeks it was like boom, boom, boom.
There was probably only a couple months between Select, from Panini, and then Topps Chrome.
I mean, it was very fast.
Yeah, it was.
So, but yeah, I do know like Tiffany Stratton is one of those in WrestleMania that if she wins, she's going to be one of the buyback wrestlers.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know who the male is, but Tiffany Stratton is the female.
Oh, okay.
I do know that much.
No, that's cool.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, Bill and I try to keep these under 45 minutes. We've been doing a pretty good job. So we'll try to do the same, although I love, what we're talking about here. So this one I know kind of interests you too, and it's just a question I have, and I'll lead with this to start off. So in front of me is WWNBA or whatever. WNBA.
WNBA, there you go.
Not WW. WNBA Prism Basketball, and Caitlin Clark, big draw in that. Rookie, I believe that would be the rookie, right?
Yes.
In that. And so, I don't sell it very well in here. I mean, honestly, like, I could sell it to other dealers and stuff, but at market price in here, it doesn't fly. And then, I was just kind of going to ask your opinion. Do you feel that this renewed interest in the WNBA is temporarily, a 1 year, kind of a one and done because of Caitlin Clark and because of her amazing college performance? Or do you feel like people like Buchers could keep this going for a year? And do you feel like women's sports in general is like a growing thing?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed, the Caitlin Clark thing's been building for the last couple of years.
Yes.
And I noticed over last year, the Summer Olympics, I don't know how many people watched the Summer Olympics, but there was kind of a big push for the women's sports. Snoop Dogg was a big supporter of the, water polo team. So, I feel like there's a big movement in general for women's sports as a whole. And rightfully so. I mean, we're my daughter and family and I are season ticket holders to Ohio State's women's basketball team, not the men's, because we love going to the women's games. I think they play better basketball, but another conversation for another day. But as far as the WNBA and what can or can't happen, I did look at one quick thing just before I drove over here. Last year's Final Four and championship game viewership was almost double what this year's was.
Okay.
So, last year's Final Four and championship with Caitlin, they did 16 million viewers.
Okay.
They were about 8 million this year.
With Paige Buchers
With Paige.
basically being the headline.
Right.
Yeah.
However, I know that feels like a big,
Yeah.
a
Like
big
50% downturn.
Yeah. However, if you go back a couple more years before Caitlin really took off,
Yeah.
the Final Four and championship viewership for women's basketball was like 2-3 million.
Okay.
So it's still way up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from what it was.
Yeah.
And I think Paige is going to be a big one. I think her rookie will be a big chase as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody that's not familiar, you've got Juju Watkins out of USC. She's
Sophomore, right?
Yeah, she's had. Do they call it like Bowman's first?
Yes.
So she's had some stuff, and will
Okay.
probably continue to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through Bowman.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so like Bowman U, yeah,
Yeah.
she's on the box.
yeah. So she'll be, and then Cooper Flagg.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think he's on the box as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're very young players
Mm-hmm.
in the college game, but I think the women's side of it has, you know, a potential of 2, 3, 4 years in a row here where it could stay course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay course.
Yeah. And so who knows? I see it. I will tell you this: as a Ohio State collector, we buy like J.C. Sheldon singles,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm paying way more today for J.C. Sheldon singles than I was before this whole boom ever happened.
Mm-hmm. So we'll just kind of close with this question. Do you feel, in general, if WNBA stays its course, and as WWE and interest from younger girls with the WWE women, do you feel like, in general, we could see more ladies in the collectible world?
Yeah, I do. I do. I was very encouraged, like I told you about the girls at the show. I was very encouraged by them, you know, because that's the future of the hobby, whether it's boys or girls.
Mm-hmm.
The young kids is the future of the hobby, and if we want the women's sports to continue to grow, then we need the young girls to feel, you know, not only welcomed into the hobby, into the shows and the shops and all that, but you know, they need to feel comfortable in dealing, just like you know, these girls were like Kellen's age.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean?
Get
Like,
what you're saying, yeah.
so yeah, I think there's a whole huge market, you know, and the female side of our hobby, it's like playing golf. You know, golf's a sport that you can play when you're 15 years old, or whether you're like Gary Player today, 90 years old at the Masters.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if you're male or female. Sports cards is the same as golf. It doesn't matter
Yes.
where you fall into any of that. Everybody can collect. There's room for everybody. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep, we'll just close with saying, we're having, in here in the shop, there'll be quite a bit more Leaf coming in, new Leaf products. There's a new basketball coming in this week, Tops 3 or something like that, basketball. So that'll be in, I believe, Friday. And then the Southway show, which we'll talk about next week too, is just a couple weeks away. And of course, the Southern Ohio Sports Card Spectacular will be at the end of May 31st. So if you missed this last one, you might want to try to make it. But we literally, and I think we were all shocked, there was literally a line to get in. To get in the show before we officially opened or whatever. So that was a good sign, and I think it's a good sign for the area and the market in general. So we appreciate you watching and appreciate you, Mike, being here. And make sure you check out Mike's Rip It Racing break page. And you know, Mike does a lot of our breaks here, and we just are canceling one of our breaks because the baseball one didn't really take off. But we'll be back at it again in a week or so, throwing another one out there.
yeah, and just real quick on that, I'll add, I've mentioned it in the break group, but I'll say it while people maybe are still watching or watching later on or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, the breaking side of this, I think a lot of people look at breaks as like a money-making thing.
Yeah.
Where for Rob and the shop here, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. It's something that Topps wants to see happening.
Yeah.
You know, they want to see that the shop is engaging in different ways. And so by supporting the break, you're supporting the shop, and their endeavors with Tops and Fanatics, and
yeah, they just want to see us put it, and you know, even the videos that I'm doing, they just want to see a well-rounded.
Yeah.
You know, we got our hands in, and we even toss around the idea of Whatnot again, trying Whatnot again, and that sort of thing. So
I would argue or encourage anybody to, if you compare brakes to other places, you probably won't find more affordable brakes anywhere else, because there's really no, you know, Rob prices the brakes, and it's basically the shelf price of the box of cards. There's no like built-in cushion or anything of that nature. Really, it's to cover the cost of the product, and that's about it. So if you're interested in brakes, reach out to Rob or myself and let us know what you're interested in, because it's much more conducive if we do brakes that people want to do than us trying to guess. We'll message each other and say, what do you think about this? I don't know, you know.
Yeah, that's true. So, so we appreciate everybody who watched. Hi, Allie, because she messaged me a couple times
there you go.
Saying, hi, Dad. So, hi, Allie. But, yeah, we appreciate you watching, and we'll be back next week, and Bill will hopefully be well-rested from his trip, you know.
I'm sure he'll have stories.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have stories for sure. So, all right, you guys have a great day, and we'll go ahead and get off here, and we'll see you next week. Appreciate you watching and appreciate you sharing too. Thank you.